Hey YouTube friends, Ben Ochart here. Thank you for tuning in. You know, sometimes I have folks ask about algae. I've had an algae bloom in my tank, and what can I do about that? And well, there's a few ways you can attack it, and some of them I'm sure you're familiar with. I mean, the most common advice you hear is cut back on the amount of light that you have on your tank, whether that's sunlight, and you know, don't put a tank where it gets direct sunlight usually, or certainly have some curtains up, or running your lights. In my case, in the running of lights, I limit the amount of time, even though on weekends when I'm around a lot, I do like to keep the lights on so I can see the fish and enjoy them more. But certainly during the week, I have them on a timer, just an inexpensive timer you can pick up anywhere, and that keeps the lights on for a few hours in the morning, so I can see them before I go to work, and then a few hours in the evening. And so that really helps to limit the amount of algae that's going to get produced. Of course, there are other methods, and another common method, of course, is to have a pleco. And plecos, of course, can help with algae control if your aquarium is one where you can have a pleco. But another way to control algae that often isn't thought of is with water changes. So let's say you're having a tough time with algae. Keep in mind your algae needs a couple things. It needs sunlight or artificial light that is a relatively wide spectrum, and it needs nitrates. So if you have a tank, let's say that you've been doing 20% water changes on once a week, why not go to 40% for a few weeks and see what happens, and see if that helps the nitrates to cut back. I wouldn't necessarily change your routine and go to maybe a 60 or 70% water change, depending on what's coming out of your tap. That could actually shock your fish a bit. Some folks do it without a problem, but you know, increase it on a gradual basis, and that will actually cut back on the nitrates that are available, and your algae will actually not be able to live. It'll die off. Now, if you have a planted tank, that could create other problems, because of course your plants are consuming that nitrate. So if you have plants, live plants, and an algae bloom, chances are you have other factors such as too much light, and that's where I would cut back the light and get a pleco in there. There are other things you can do, of course. I mean, there's products like this thing here. This is a Brightwell NO3 brick. I have some cubes in the sump. I'm going to be adding this Brightwell brick. You can see here. Apparently it has more surface area than any product on the market, but it's doped with I think it's sulfur or something that helps it to really reduce nitrates. So I'm going to be putting this into the middle chamber of the sump, and that can reduce nitrates. If you're running a canister or even a decent sized hang-on back filter, you can do something like Brightwell cubes. I have the Brightwell cubes in the sump currently. They're just small cubes that you can just drop into the filter, and they help to reduce the nitrates. So starve the algae of nitrates with either increased water changes or adding something like a Brightwell, and you know, you'll find, especially if you cut back the light a little bit, you'll find that your algae will start to retreat. Now, I'm talking, of course, about green algae, which I kind of like. I like what it does, but I don't like it on the front panels of the tank. I like to keep that clear of any algae, brown or green. And different kinds of algae can mean different things, like phosphates and other things in your tank. So study up on that and find out what's going on, and you'll be able to control your algae. Okay? And in my case, I actually harness algae and use it with what are called algae scrubbers. In other words, I actually grow algae in a controlled environment, an algae scrubber, and that algae scrubber helps to absorb nitrates, and as a byproduct, it also gives off oxygen, like all green growing things in your tank tend to do. Okay, So those are my tips on controlling your algae, and that's it for me today. Be sure to comment, rate, share, and I hope you found this helpful, and I appreciate you tuning in. Thank you so much.